in the morning time, that 8 to 12, like I don't do anything but prospect during that time. Like that's just a habit, Then I meet with my assistants and find out if there's anything I need to know, maybe get lunch, and then I'll have my appointments. But if I don't have an appointment, I just jump back on. When I started my career, I literally, would have the white pages, and I would start at A, and my goal every year was to try to get to Z.
That's a sickness.
Because they didn't have all the different technologies out there.
Yeah.
You could pull up a couple expires, but there wasn't a lot of expires because we were in a good market. So I just got used to just cold calling people.
Yeah.
It's just a habit. And so many people don't realize, like, behind all those cold calls is everything that you want.
You're going to bed every night, like drained, that you gave everything out there.
Yeah.
And you're trying to think of ways to work smarter, not harder. And then those distractions of like, oh, well, maybe invest in this, build a team this way, do this, that, and the other. How did you avoid those distractions and stay laser focused on the objective you had at hand?
I think for me, I mean, Mike Ferry and Steve Powers, they got me really focused on my schedule. So for me, it's like in the morning time, that 8 to 12, like I don't do anything but prospect during that time. Like that's just a habit, Then I meet with my assistants and find out if there's anything I need to know, maybe get lunch, and then I'll have my appointments. But if I don't have an appointment, I just jump back on. The one thing that people would never know about me is that if I don't have an appointment, I'm literally making calls all day. Because you have to realize, if you don't make calls, you're out of business.
Yeah.
Any moment that you are a real estate agent and you are not making an outbound call, or someone is not calling you, you might as well turn your sign over and just say out of business. If you're not going to make calls, I tell everyone, go home. I'd much rather you spend time with your family than just sit at the office and do nothing. And I see so many agents. It's like, I had one agent that came in and he had never made 100 contacts a day. And so he was like, I want to shadow you. And I was like, great, but there's only one thing if you want to shadow me. If you really want to know what my life is like, you need to live with me. Come live at my house, get up in the morning at 4:30 or 5, work out with me, prime, drive to the office and see I make calls, make the 8 to 10 hours a day of calls, and then see if you think you still want to be me. And it was funny because the guy was supposed to stay for 4 days. He only lasted 2 days. But by the second day, he was exhausted. The third day, he left in the middle of the day and was like, I don't know how you do it. Because he doesn't realize, like, it's prospecting at that level with that intensity. It's like a muscle. You have to work it. And he had never worked that. But, the second day, he got 100 contacts. And I still talk to that guy. Yeah. He's having his best year. But coming out and being a part and just seeing what that was like, it completely transformed the way he looked at it. Because everyone has this image of what they see on TV. And that's just not reality. You know what I mean? Unless you're on a reality show, like, people just don't flock and call you. You have to go find people every day. You have to be a hunter.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people, they don't understand that every day you have to go out and find people that want to buy and sell. And if you don't do that, turn the sign over and stay out of business. Yep. And so many new agents, they don't realize that. They work 8 or 10 hours, but then it's like, well, how many contacts did you make? 11? Like,
you didn't work. Like,
you can make 11 contacts in like 40 minutes. What did you do the rest of the day? And they don't realize they're not putting the effort in. You could be at the office for 10 hours a day. It doesn't matter. If you're not making calls and no one's calling you, you're not going to make any money.
If the 2006 Mike Putnam gave yourself a call, right? What's one piece of advice that you'd give him? He's struggling. He has the vodka on. He's just like, I'm disgusted by everything that's there. What's one piece of advice you'd give him?
I would probably tell him to trust the process. When that 2006 Mike, he didn't understand what he was capable of. And I think when you trust the process of making all those calls that I ended up doing, like, I came from such scarcity that, had I come from a more abundant mindset, I would have been able to get out of that way faster. It's just, in my career early on, I would fight that thing about what am I really capable of? Because most of the limitations, they're all in our mind. Like, what's the difference between someone that makes $1 million and $2 million? It's just all mindset. Yeah. Like, it's so weird that, like, I remember thinking that my greatest moment of my life would be when I make $1 million. I had this vision that day I was going to go to the club and I was going to get a bus and all my friends were going to come there and we're going to celebrate. Like, it's going to be the most magnificent day. And I remember the first day that I actually made $1 million. It was in like maybe August or September of whatever year. And it was like 11 o'clock at night. I was still at the office. My wife was calling me. I was dealing with all these fires. And I was just kind of laughing, like, this is what it feels like. You know what I mean? Because, like,
no difference.
It's not what I envisioned, because, like, I hadn't grown into the kind of person that was doing that. It's like I just pushed and pushed and pushed. And it's like, You can push and make $1 million, but like your whole life is different. Now I can make $2 million and my life is completely different. It's scheduled. I take Sundays off. I work half a days on Saturdays. It's like, it's so different, but it's because I grew into that thing. It's like so many people focus on, I want to make $1 million. I want to make 500,000 instead of looking at who do I need to become? What kind of person do I need to become that could make 500,000? What are the habits of someone that makes 500,000? What kind of calls do they make? What time do they get up? And that's where you have like the shifts. I want to make $1 million, but I want to sleep until 9 o'clock.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. I want to make $1 million, but I don't want to cold call. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's going to take you a lot longer to do that. And nowadays you could make $1 million, but you could buy it. Okay. Like, I was on a podcast, what was it? Maybe 3 months ago. And there was an agent on there and he was selling in the Midwest. He did like 684 deals so far. He did like 300 million. And he was telling me that the splits, and he was talking about, the assistants, he did his radio and marketing, and he spends money on Zillow. And so we get into the studio afterwards into this virtual blue room.
Yep.
And I said, let me ask you something. I was like, how much money are you actually making? Because I'm looking at your splits and they seem like you're giving the agents a lot more and you're spending so much. You got 20 assistants. And he's like, well, you can't look at it like that. And I'm like, well, I'm not criticizing you, but like, I'm just curious. He's like, well, last year, I made 250 and this year I'm on pace to make a little over 350,000.
Wow.
Jesus.
He did 384 million.
Holy shit.
He's like the number 1 agent in whatever the hell he was. And it's like, he didn't make any money.
That's all you got.
Like, who wants to go through all of that work to make 350,000?
Yeah.
I might as well just sell like 20 houses and just do that the first 2 months and just take the rest of the year off. You know what I mean?
Well, it's just as stressful. It's just stressful. You're managing all those people. I felt like that over the last year or two, like where I'm just sitting here managing how this person talks to this person, but none of it matters because it's not actually affecting the bottom line. Or it is infecting the bottom line because
they focus on the number, but it's like, it's how do you get to the number? Can you get there profitable? It's like you're growing your team. If you looked at yourself and said, I'm going to double my business, but I'm going to make the same amount, would you do it?
No. That's
No,
more work.
but that's the problem with a lot of agents. There's so many ways to manipulate to say, I make 200 houses, I sell 200, but like you got 30 agents and each agent is averaging 2 and you don't make any money. It's just, when people look at real estate, they have to realize there's one thing to sell a lot of houses, but the most important thing is you have to be profitable.
Right.
You have to make sure that if you're going to risk all this money, there has to be a reward.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things with Steve, he's really helped me with just keeping the expenses low so that when you actually make money, you get to keep it.
That's the number one thing I think I appreciate about the MFO model is that it's profitable, right? It's duplicatable, it's predictable. It may not be the most exciting thing to do every single day and the way you want to spend your morning, but it works and it's profitable, right? Yeah. There's
Absolutely.
things you could go
out
and
more profit.
Exactly. There's things you could do every single day that could make you money, but this is actually profitable. Mike's not actually teaching you or telling you to spend any money at all, unless, some lead services here and there. But other than that, that's it.
I mean, if I look at my career now, the biggest mistake that I made, and, I'm sure Mike talked about it, but for whatever reason, I didn't hear it early in my career, was past clients.
Yeah.
What I heard from Mike is you get a deal, you give it to your assistant, and you find another one. So I remember back in the day, like my first year, I had a big file in my back car, and my goal was to fill up this little file cabinet in my back car, in the back of my car. And then at the end of the year, I would just throw it away. And then the next year was to get like 2 file cabinets. And then I didn't call any of my past clients. It wasn't until like my 10th year that I started to actually realize that like you should call your past clients. But I was so involved, expires, for sale bonus, cold calling. Yeah. I was so obsessed with hunting and hunting. Yep. And you find out with a lot of Mike Ferry agents, there's either one or the other. The best agents in Mike Ferry, all of us, they have trouble, a lot of them, with actually calling the past clients. It's harder for us to call past clients than it is to call an expired or for sale boner or go knock on a door cold.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's not as fun. We develop that crazy hunting mindset and, you want to like sort of turn over rocks and you want to it has to be a little bit difficult in a weird way.